Hey,
Hey,
the like famous line these days of "Can you hear me? Okay, the recording, we're good.
yeah,
I see
we're
you.
recording.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for making the time to organize this call with me. I thought we could just chat a little bit and talk about the fundraising because we did it. We got the money that we need to cover your wheelchair batteries, which is
Yeah.
really exciting. And just kind of as a thank you to everybody that donated and everybody that's been supporting, just to give them a chance to maybe hear a little bit more about your story and kind of what's coming next. So yeah, how are you feeling today? I mean, knowing that we've got the money finally, and it was taking time, right? Because we had so many donations coming in over Thanksgiving and the holiday there. So the Dayton Foundation, they were actually closed for a few days trying to process everything. So you just got the news recently, actually.
Yeah, it was a huge relief. Because my doctor and I acknowledged, my primary care physician and I acknowledged that I needed a wheelchair like over a year ago. Um, and it has been, I actually, I just, well, no, it was exactly a year ago, I think. It feels like it was over a year ago because I think I was probably sitting and stewing on it and like trying to come to terms with the fact that I needed a mobility aid for a while. And then I talked to her about it. And that memory came up on Facebook that I shared with you of my doctor saying that a wheelchair is not a sign of defeat. It's a sign that you understand your needs and what you need to be able to be independent and live a fuller life. And so for me, this is a huge relief because I kept struggling with, oh my God, how am I going to pay this for this? Because insurance, for those who don't know, insurance won't cover unless you need it in the home. So basically, the only people who can get mobility aids covered by insurance are people who are severely disabled to the point that they cannot, like, if they are paralyzed, for instance, paralysis, you would be able to get it covered under insurance. But because I can manage in my home okay, and I need the mobility aid just when I leave my house, insurance is like, nope.
Yeah, you're not disabled enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and this
So,
was
and that's a huge issue for me because I also don't have a driver's license because when I was younger, I had seizures, and then when I was going to get my driver's license, I had my first seizure right before I went to take the test, and so I was never able to get that done. And at a certain point, it just fell by the wayside. So for me, like a wheelchair is huge in terms of being able to access public transportation, getting to the grocery store, getting to the pharmacy, basic things that able-bodied people take for granted every day that I just cannot easily do without severe consequences, like having a flare, being in pain and bedbound for days. I went to the zoo last fall and I was bedbound for a week and I had to get a shot of painkillers to be able to, from my doctor's office, to be able to function and not be laying in bed in so much pain that it was awful. So having that wheelchair means that I'll be able to access things that people do every day and don't think about. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really creates almost like a new baseline of activity that you can achieve. And I think you and I, we share a lot of similar experiences around this. And Sarah Spins, the collective, was actually started because the insurance would not cover my wheelchair. And even in the instances of paralysis, like the wheelchair that you'll be using, which is actually my old one, with a little more updates and now getting these wheelchair batteries, those are not considered necessary at all. So the e-motion assist wheels, so it's like, the rigid, I'm just explaining this for those that maybe don't know, the rigid frame chair with, it takes very little effort to push the wheels, right? I mean, that makes a huge difference in terms of fatigue and in terms of chronic pain if you're living with, and when you exacerbate
Yeah.
that energy, I mean, I know you get stuck in this cycle.
Well,
It's
yeah,
really,
because that's just transferring the pain and the fatigue to another area of your body if you have to put all that effort. It doesn't really, because the issue is that, you know, it's spending that energy in the first place is the issue. So, when my doctor and I were talking, she said, no, you definitely need a motorized wheelchair because you have too much lower back pain to be moving in a manual wheelchair, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough, especially on campus at the University of Cincinnati, where you're a
Not
student. I think anybody
at
yeah,
all.
anybody who knows that campus knows that it's really I mean, they've definitely made improvements in terms of accessibility, even since I was a student there. But I mean, yeah, it's really a new world being able to get around on campus the wheelchair, and I'm really excited that you'll finally have it, hopefully starting
Yeah.
next
And the
semester.
other thing too is when I do my internship or when I do research when COVID is, not as big of a thing as it is now, I will be able to access and finish those parts of my degree that are necessary to get into a doctoral program. So, for instance, for the substance abuse counseling portion of my degree, I need to do an internship. That is a major barrier, not having a mobility device for me in terms of accessing and being able to go to an internship. Of course, I've been able to secure an internship anyway, because right now no one is taking interns, and if they are, they're only taking a few master's students or doctoral students, not bachelor students. So I have to wait anyway. But when I am finally able to get that internship requirement taken care of, that wheelchair is going to be huge. So yes, it is absolutely life-changing for me. Even just going down the street to get my medications instead of having them shipped by the USPS, which they've lost my medications in the mail before. So yeah.
Well, this is a good thing, Ben, and I'm, as hard as it is even for my European colleagues and my French friends here to understand the need for a collective like this to fundraise for something like this. I think it also brings attention to some of the challenges of living with disability and chronic illness that maybe people wouldn't think about otherwise. And I know that you're kind of also looking at this. I mean, obviously, living it in your personal life, but professionally, do you maybe want to explain a little bit more your majors and sort of your academic goals? And I know you've got an impressive list of McNair Scholar and everything else. I mean, your CV is packed already, but what are you working on right now?
So I am my story is long and complicated and full of twists and turns because there's always I feel like there's always one more barrier to overcome, right? But there is basically right now I'm a non-traditional student and I went back to school in 2017, right? That's when I went back to school, I think. I went back to school in the fall of 2017 to study psychology and substance abuse counseling. I started part-time. I have done full-time a couple of semesters, but most of the time since I've come back has been part-time, and I've been working towards getting my bachelor's degrees in psychology and substance abuse counseling with the long-term goal of going on to get my doctorate in either clinical or counseling psychology. I initially came back to school because I wanted to become a psychologist to provide therapy and to make care more accessible and more equitable for marginalized populations, especially trans people, as I am a trans person myself. But in general, my goal has always been to make things better for marginalized people in healthcare. And so, especially coming from a background as a trans person, I don't know any trans person who has not experienced discrimination or violations in a healthcare setting. I've certainly been discriminated against. I've actually had people deny making appointments for me once they find out I'm trans. And some scarier things too that I won't get into. But that is unfortunately very commonplace. And so that has always been my goal. And then over the years, as I've been working with different professors and I started research this semester as a research assistant in the I forget the exact name of it. It's Human Rights and Social Context Lab here at UC with Dr. Anjali Dutt. I've had her, as well as the program director of the substance abuse counseling department and others, say that I should consider a career in research. And that was never necessarily my goal when I went in. I'm certainly interested in research, and I think having an understanding of research is important for providing good health care, because that's part of the job, is understanding the research and being on top of it. But I partially wanted to do the doctorate in psychology because I just wanted that research background so I could provide good therapy. And now I'm starting to see that possibility of having a career which serves my community, not just in one dimension in terms of providing therapy and assessment and things like that, but also in doing research and teaching as well. Those are other ways I can serve my community. And specifically, the trans population is extremely understudied, and that has wide-reaching effects on the quality of care that therapists and other healthcare providers can give to the trans population. Because we're an understudied population, a lot of the healthcare for trans people is guesswork. And so I really think that there's a lot that I can offer as somebody who lives at the intersection of multiple identities and is wanting to make healthcare more equitable and more accessible. And what word am I looking for? I don't know.
Well, everything you're saying.
But yeah, I think people are I think that there's a lot of issues when you are a racial or ethnic minority, or you're disabled, or you're trans, or you're queer, or you're a religious minority. Even there's so many refugees, there's so many people who are parts of marginalized groups who healthcare providers do not have the understanding and the research. I feel like there's just so much work that needs to be done to improve healthcare outcomes for marginalized groups.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like you're saying, you're identifying already huge gaps in our basics, fundamental scientific understanding, and then let alone the applications of that understanding or that research in a clinical context. The gap is huge. And
when I went back to school when I say I went back to school for psychology and substance abuse counseling, I initially was only declared as a major in psychology, and then the substance abuse counseling came about a year later, I think. Mm-hmm. And part of my reasoning for that is I saw that substance abuse counseling as a field, substance use treatment for substance use disorders, is very divided along gender lines. And so, and that is true in general in mental health, but it's even more so when you're looking at inpatient and stuff like that. But it's even more so the case when you're looking at substance use treatment. And I spoke with trans people, and also the trans community, but also the wider LGBTQ community is significantly impacted by substance use issues. It is a major problem and public health issue within queer and trans communities. And so for me, I saw that, and I saw this is a way that I can expand my understanding and I can help. And the other issue too is that substance use treatment and mental health treatment, other mental health treatment, they're divided. A lot of people don't know that. The fields are two separate fields. Mm-hmm. So even though substance use disorders are technically a behavioral health disorder, they're classified and treated as different, so that someone who has both a substance use disorder and, say, something like PTSD or borderline personality disorder or major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, whatever it may be, someone who has those co-occurring disorders may not be able to get access to the treatment they need, because they need care for their psychiatric diagnosis over here, but they also need care for their substance use disorder. So they just ping pong back and forth, because very few people are qualified to treat both, and the systems work apart from each other instead of being integrated. Now, there is currently a move towards integrating them, but that is we're at the very beginning of that. and there's a
Right.
lot of work that needs to be done. And so I'm trying to, my goal in being a therapist, not necessarily as a researcher, but my goal as a therapist is to be able to treat, that's one of my goals, is to be able to treat both substance use disorders and other psychiatric diagnoses. So
Yeah,
yeah.
in a much more holistic and comprehensive way.
Yeah.
And you know, what you're saying, I mean, also resonates with me. I know we've talked about the syndrome soup and
Yeah.
having to see a specialist for each diagnosis and how
Yeah.
until
And
you
getting them to communicate with each other. That's
right.
one of the reasons I considered going to medical school, because I would love, ideally, I would love to just be a one-stop shop for like, okay, I can, like, I would love to just be able to prescribe medication if it is needed and also provide therapy. But I don't think the medical school is the path for me. And also, psychologists are gaining prescription rights slowly but surely. There are a few states where they already have them. And so that would just, if that ever happened in Ohio or wherever I end up, I would just do the if I can, I would just do the necessary training to be able to prescribe if that was the case. So
Right. Well, and just be able to, again, we're talking about filling these gaps
yeah.
or bridging these gaps rather, that we see in care and that I think you and I both experienced in the medical system in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
a big conversation.
well, and I'm just so in awe of your resiliency. I mean, I've known you for years now, and you continue to persevere, like you said, through each obstacle. I mean, the story of trying to graduate, I know is never ending. Almost it feels like, but I know that you're working extremely hard, and I hope you feel supported at least by the efforts of a collection like Sarah Spence, even though it's just one tiny piece, of your entire experience. Just to help other people maybe recognize, that what their path was isn't always true for somebody else either.
Yeah, it's been, and a lot of that has been that difficulty in accessing care for me, because I mean, even this semester, I got 2 new diagnoses, so like I've been on this journey of trying to figure out what the hell is going on for a long time. And when you're undiagnosed too, people don't take it seriously. And even
Yeah.
once you're diagnosed, there's issues. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that as a disabled student, it is very difficult to gather the resources that you need. And it's kind of like, it's like a game. It's like when you set up dominoes and you tip one over, it's just like one thing leads into the next. And if you can't, get your health issues solved, then it can be difficult to perform to the level that you're capable of. I got a 4.0 last fall, but I also was, while I was taking 12 credit hours for the first time, I was so proud of myself. And also, things happened to line up very well. And then COVID happened. And, so it's been a journey, but I have worked very hard to pull myself up. I studied English literature for 5 years, struggled because I had many undiagnosed health conditions and wasn't able to finish it. And then I dropped out for a year, and then I came back, and I have just worked very hard to pull my GPA up from, I was very close to being on academic probation, and now I have been on the dean's list every semester since I returned.
Yeah.
And I am now up finally to a 3.0 after almost being on academic probation back when I was studying English literature. So I've worked very, very hard to get to where I am, and I'm very motivated. And I want to do good things, and yeah, so.
You are, and I know you will. And I hate to say like you work hard, like kind of this bootstrap mentality, because that's not what I mean. I mean, I just see so clearly your resiliency. That's not necessarily been a choice for you to have either, but it's, I think that is really what I hope if somebody watches this, that they can see and that they might be motivated to continue to help you and to support you. And, when you came to me with this need, Sarah Spence has been around for some years now, and it was difficult for me just honestly to try to manage while I was also in grad school. After graduating UC, barely graduating UC, I was on academic probation. But I finally, as you say, all the pieces come together. I had the resources I need to graduate and then to go on to graduate school with a newfound quality of life that changed everything for me. And so coming back then to this idea of trying to, again, fundraise and network and build this coalition together. I mean, it's the work is it's both and, right? Rebecca Lehman, she used to be at the UC, but she kind of taught me this idea that, you know, it's amazing that we can all come together to support someone like you. And it also kind of sucks that we have to anyway, because
these systems should already exist.
Yeah, exactly.
People's basic needs should be met, period. Regardless, there should be no, I am personally of the belief that no one should have to struggle to get their basic needs met, to get healthcare, to have opportunities to build a better life for themselves. You know, and I could go more in depth on that if you want, or I could, but my point is that the system should already exist, and it is also amazing that we can build this network and make it happen. So yeah.
But you know, here, like trying to explain to my French friends what this was for. I mean, they couldn't understand.
Yeah, because
the wheelchair, you got one. Like there's no more to the story. And I also struggled, you know, this already with the idea of doing a 5K for the fundraiser, because I wanted, well, we needed something that was, you know, safe and in terms of COVID friendly, right? And then people would be able to do it on their own or not. And if they couldn't donate, and they could participate by doing something else. Because, you know, to me, running was such a huge part of my identity before I became disabled when I was 16, which was literally 10 years ago. And it's still this like internalized ableism. It's really what it is, that I still feel the need sometimes to push. And of course, you have to know when to push, but also when to respect your body and listen to your body.
That's a hard balance, especially when you don't want to be laying in bed, you know? Like, it's just, I think people have this misconception all the time. Like, they're like, oh, I would love to rest. And I'm like, do you think I like not being able to work?
No.
Do you think I like being in bed in pain? This isn't a vacation for me. Like, this is my life. And I don't think part of the way I've been paying for school is through, well, actually, I can't say that, but I've had help through, they don't like it when you say that. But my point is that I am working working on my degree in part so that I can support myself, so I can have the education to have a job. Because currently the jobs I qualify for, I can't physically work. You know, so I worked very hard for years. I did a lot of jobs. I worked at a casino, I worked at a food truck, and it destroyed my body, you know? And so it's two things. I'm trying to be able to support myself, and also I'm trying to get back to my community at the same time. So.
And it's amazing to see you continue to uplift others as you continue to move forward. And I want to take this opportunity too for you to kind of maybe talk about some of the ways that people who might be inspired by our story or want to follow, you know, your journey, what could they do to stay in touch?
Yeah. So I have a link tree which is available, and it has my social media and my story and a number of ways to support me, including Patreon, for those who are interested in being sponsors of my education. Attached to that Patreon, I am working on a new project called The Brunch Club, which is it will be starting as a podcast. We may branch off into other things, but it's basically a catch-all for you know, talking about things that I'm passionate about and that I feel need attention, or, you know, for instance, talking about issues related to mental health or social justice or inequalities, and there may be some other topics too, but really just to have a space to be authentic and sit with people, and, you know, give something back and sit in conversation during this pandemic and everything. And that's still evolving. Just stay tuned, I guess. But if you want to support that, and you want to have a first peek, and you also want to support me in my education, you can go to my link tree, and then my Patreon will be on there. And there's also one-time ways to support through PayPal, or I have a GoFundMe that I need to update. And also I have some other things as well on there. So.
Yeah, and just speaking as somebody that's been following and trying to support in the ways that I can for a few years now, for some people that might not know, Patreon is essentially like a monthly subscription. And this is one way that I'm just speaking for myself, I keep accountable to making sure that I am, redistributing what I'm able to give and in a monthly way. Like it's automatic, it's super easy. And I really appreciate that you always take the time to send like almost monthly postcards of like thank you, like
I
all
try
the
to.
across the world.
I'm not always good about it because the handwriting. I'm getting to the point now where it's just handwriting can be hard. So
Well,
but
I mean to say like it's a nice way that I feel it's quite an easy way, I guess, for people to help for less than the cost of like what Netflix is per month. I think Patreon is a really great tool to support those in our lives that are, content creators that are really working to give that community, and people like you, where you're so public as well with your story and even with your finances. I mean, on a level that's like really.
I try to be accountable because I know that people are really struggling right now. And so for the people who have stayed on my Patreon and who have supported me, I am incredibly grateful because I know that this pandemic is hitting a lot of people really hard. And so for those who have stuck around and are continuing to help me, thank you. I am trying to create a project. I've had a few bumps in the road on creating a project that really I feel will stick. And so I think that this one may just be it. So, but the Brunch Club will probably, just keep a lookout for that, and check out the Patreon if you're interested in learning more. It is still very much in the works. So I don't have an exact deadline on that yet, but I will keep you all posted.
No, but it's really great to see everything that you're doing and that you continue to work on. And just speaking from my personal experience, I mean, it's really nice that you share your learning with us, right? Like I feel like I've been on this journey with you, and you've taught me so much in the world of mental health and otherwise. And I love our nerdy conversations too, at the intersection of neuroscience and.
Honestly, I just told Sarah earlier. I was like, if I ever come into unlimited finances, I will just collect degrees like they're postage stamps after I become a psychologist, of course, because I feel like that is one of the things I really appreciate about my mom, is that she instilled a love of lifelong learning in me. And I love learning, and I'm really curious about a lot of different things. So yeah. But
you are definitely a lifelong learner. That is as long as I've known you.
That is another reason I'm converted to Judaism. That's one of the things I love about Judaism. It's very central to it as well. Is lifelong.
And I feel like I could keep talking to you about so many things, but I want to tell people to follow you on Twitter because I
love where I'm most active.
Yeah. And I love following your thoughts on faith and your conversion to Judaism and your mental health takes, and also the pictures of your cat, who, if they don't know by now, is named Chicken. It kills me every time.
So you want me to tell the story behind that? Because I can.
Tell us.
Okay, the story is she came with the name Chicory, which I absolutely hated. I thought it was too long and too, I don't know, fancy. It just didn't roll off the tongue. It was so hard to say. I couldn't imagine myself coming home and being like, hey, Chicory, every time. It just like, it was hard to say. And I was like, do I call her Corey? Like, what do I call? And no, then I made a joke to my friend. I was like, what if I called her Chicken for short? And it was a joke at first, but then she came home and it turns out she has a huge startle response. She got scared really easily, and so I named her Chicken. It's kind of funny actually, because we have this conception of chickens as being, kind of scaredy cats, but they're not. They're very bold and they will attack anything and everything. I've heard they eat mice actually. So
I believe it, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they're the closest living relative of the T-Rex, so it makes sense.
So she's a fierce little chicken.
Yeah, well, no, I named her that because she's a scaredy cat.
Oh.
she's not fierce. She's a scaredy cat. But she does get very enthusiastic about playing, so she will scream at me to play with her. She was doing that earlier. So yeah.
That's so sweet. Well, thank you, Zach, so much for taking the time. We will announce the winners from the raffle as soon as I finish my function on Excel to do the random drawing.
Yes, they will be in the text attached to this video. And so are we gonna upload this video just to Facebook or elsewhere too? I was thinking.
Yeah, we can do that. But let's just say congrats to the winners. Thank you so much for donating.
Congratulations. Thank you for participating. Thank you for helping me get that wheelchair. Yes. It's huge. So
thank you.